What's up, you Sigma the Bluffers? I've got a special episode for you today because 1. I'm playing a session at the game, which I've only visited 4 times since starting this channel, even though they're one of the best clubs in town, and 2. I'm meeting fellow poker vlogger Buffalo Sam, who's currently on the 6-month road trip through the US. He's an excellent poker player and a very cool dude, so make sure to check out his channel. I'll throw a link in the description. Shout out to Watching Walruses for connecting us. So here we are, Buffalo Sam, me, the game, a venue where I always seem to run like shit and have a rough time. Let's see if things turn out different this time. So I think Sam and I sat at the table at around 7:15, and this first hand I get involved in happens at around 8:30, so it's already been about an hour and 15 minutes of card dead city for me. In this one I pick up ace jack off suit for middle position, action folds to me, I open to 10, and the small blind is the only player to make the call. We go heads up to a flop of jack 8 ace rainbow, I flop 2 pair, let's go. Small blind checks to me, I fire a c-bet of 15, and they make the call. Cool. The turn comes a queen, not the best card in the deck for me, as it completes the straight with king 10 and 10-9. I could also be up against a single ace, so I fire for 40 bucks, and they call again. Interesting. We're headed to the river, which comes the ace of diamonds. I river the nuts. Small blind checks to me for a 3rd time, and I get a little bit carried away. I overbet for 160, and after thinking for a little bit, my opponent makes the fold. About half an hour later, this hand happens where I'm on the small blind with 7-6 of spades. Action folds to middle position who limps, low jack limps, high jack limps, I call, and the big blind checks their option. We go 5 ways to a flop of jack 7-6 rainbow. I flop bottom 2. Typically, when I'm first to act, I like to start things off with a check, but with bottom 2 here, I don't want to risk this checking through, so I lead for 10. The big blind calls, middle position calls, the low jack calls, and the high jack folds. We're going 4 ways to the turn, which comes to 10 of diamonds. I'm not really sure how to feel about this turn card because 8-9 gets there, jack 10 makes a better 2 pair, and 3 players call my flop bet. In the end, I decide to fire a second bet of 35 bucks, and after about 10 seconds, the big blind raises to 135. Middle position and low jack players fold, and this is a really rough spot. Taking a look at my opponent's stack, they have about 200 bucks behind. I don't think they're ever raising with just a jack here. Really, the best case scenario for me is they have jack X of diamonds. The problem is I can't just call and let them realize their equity on the river. I have to go all in, but even if I do, they're still getting the right price to make the call and either make their flush or river a bigger 2 pair. That's not even considering the most likely scenario that I'm already behind a hand like jack 10 or a suited 9-8. I mean, even jack 7 is possible from the big blind in a limp pot. So in the end, my 2 reasonable options are going all in, either giving my opponent the right price to call or value cutting myself against a better hand, or folding. I'm making it look like an easy decision, but I ended up tanking for about 2.5 minutes. Shout out to my table mates for their patience before finally making the fold. My opponent later told me they had jack 7 of diamonds. Nice hand. 45 minutes later, action folds to middle position who limps, cutoff limps. Sam limps from the small blind before I look down at pocket jacks in the big blind. I raise to 15, I get called by middle position, the cutoff, and Sam is going to make the fold. We go 3 ways to a flop. It's a beauty. Ace 7 queen rainbow. Here's the deal though. I don't think my opponents are lip calling with a lot of hands that flop strong on this board. The only notable exception being pocket 7s, and this is the 3rd hand I've played in 2.5 freaking hours. Putting these 2 factors together, I decide to straight up turn my pair of jacks into a bluff and fire for 30. I get the job half done as the middle position player makes the call and a cutoff folds. We go heads up to the turn, and it's a gorgeous one. The king of diamonds, can I get a fucking break here? At this point, I'm full-blown tilting. Whatever little reason I have left in me will point out that I can now rep 2 pair with ace king or second set with kings, and that I blocked the nut straight twice with pocket jacks. For that reason, I decide to fire a second bet of 80 bucks. It's at this moment I realize that blind with rage, I didn't notice the middle position player only had 120 or so behind. I now helplessly wait for them to utter the words, "Oh, thank fuck they fold." Another 45 minutes go by before I play another hand. This session is just brutal. I somehow managed to not film the hand, but that's nothing a little blur and video editing magic can fix. In this one, I get dealt ace jack suited in middle position, There's an early position open to 10, I 3-bet to 40, the big blind cold calls the 3-bet, and the early position raiser makes the call. We go 3 ways to the flop with 120 bucks in the middle, and it comes Jack 7-5-1 spade, a flop top pair. Nice. Action checks to me, and on this board I can c-bet on the smaller side. I continue for 50, the big blind calls, and the early position player folds. Heads up to the turn, which is interesting. It's the 5 of spades, giving me the nut flush draw and pairing the board. The big blind checks, and I decide to check back for pot control. The river comes to 10 of clubs. Big blind checks for a third time. I decide to try and make up for lost value on the turn and bet 80, trying to get a call from a worse jack or a medium pocket pair. I don't get a call. I don't get a fold either. I get check raised all in for 262 bucks. Fuck me. I'll be completely honest, in game my mind kind of froze and all I could think was there's no way I'm good here. But now that I get the chance to look back and think through the hand, I'm not really sure what my opponent is representing here. They never have aces, kings, or queens when they just flat call my 3-bet pre-flop. It's hard for them to have jacks since I blocked that hand. Do they really flat call a 3-bet with a 5 in their hand? Maybe ace-5 suited? I don't think pocket 7s or pocket 10s check the river because they don't want me to check back. Could they be doing this with a hand like jack 10 suited? So yeah, now that I'm looking back on this hand, I think this is a very suspicious play for my opponent, and I'd be inclined to finding a call. But in game I went with a fold. Nice hand to my opponent. I think I played this hand really poorly. This one stinks. Moving on to this next hand, it's now getting close to midnight. I've been grinding it out for close to 5 hours, and this is only the 5th hand of note. Sam is racking up after booking a nice profit, but before I walk him out, I'm going to get involved in this hand where 4 players limp before I look down at ace-10 offsuit in the small blind. I raise it up to 20, the big blind calls, and then every player who limped calls. This is turning out to be another typical session at the game for me. Card dead, tough spots, and my raises getting about as much respect as this dude trying to rob a store.
Everybody get down! Get out of the money! It's got the pockets! Get out! Have the money!
I'm looking at Sam, who's watching the hand unfold, and if you ever wondered what someone slowly going crazy at the poker table sounds like, here it is. So 6 ways, yes, 6 ways we go to the flop, which comes 9, 3, 10. I flop top pair. I've got 78 bucks behind and I'm like, ship it! Big blind folds, under the gun wants a count, they get it and make the call. Rest of the table folds. So we're going heads up to the turn, which comes a 6 of clubs, good, and the river is another 10. I show my trip 10s and they're good, and I get an almost full triple up. Now, if you see that red button in front of me, that's the bomb pot button, meaning I get to call the game that is played, and since the table is currently short-handed, it means we can play my favorite game, Dramaha, and I get to show it to Sam, who's never seen it before. So I think 3 of us end up playing the hand, and we see a flop of 5, 4, 8, 2 clubs, and I look down at king 9, 9, 9, 7 with 2 clubs. I've got trip 9s in my hand, and the second nut flush draw, and a gut shot straight draw on the board. Nice. Small blind leads for 30, under the gun calls, and I make the call. Heading into draw time, trip 9s has a good chance of being best, and I've got outs to make what would likely be the best hand on the board, so I decide to stem pat and keep my cards. The turn comes a 7, which gives me a pair and brings in the straight for 3-6 and 6-9, but I block 6-9 with 3 9s in my hand, so overall, not a bad turn. Action checks to me this time. I bet 80 bucks. The small blind calls, and under the gun gets out of the way. We go heads up to the river, which comes another 8. I sadly break out on all my draws. The small blind decides to go all in for 65 bucks. I don't have any other option but to call. I show my trips, fully expecting them to be good and chop. But no, my opponent shows 3 aces with an 8 for trip 8s on the board. I get scooped, and I'm pretty sure Sam will never play Dramaha now. And this brings us to the final hand of the vlog. Do you want to have a guess at how much time has passed since the Dramaha hand? Half an hour? Nope. An hour? An hour and a half? Psst. How about a full fucking 2 hours? 2 hours of raising and whiffing, calling and missing, or just plain folding. And if you're looking at my stack wondering where those chips came from, let me reassure you, I did not win them. Instead, I added on for another 400 bucks. I'm in for 800, currently down 400, and desperately trying to break even. It's almost 2 a.m. on a school night, so I announced to my table mates that this is my last hand, and I'm not saying this just to sound cool. You can literally hear my neighbor say last hand right here.
Awesome.
Yeah.
To which I just say yeah, when really what I mean is yeah, because I can't take this shit anymore. So in this one, we're playing a $10 522 bomb pot. And when you play this game after running like shit or being card dead for hours, there's always that glimmer of hope that you're going to get a good hand, smash both boards and scoop. But this is not really what happens here. I'm getting shit card after shit card. And so we go 7 ways to the flop, which comes deuce jack 8 on top and 3 10 5 on bottom. I flop a set of 8s and a jack high flush draw on top, a pair of 5s, and some backdoor draws on bottom. The big blind leads for 30, middle position player calls. I call from the cutoff, the button calls, and the small blind calls. So we've got quite a nice spot brewing as we go 5 ways to the turn, which comes a 4 of diamonds on top and a 4 of hearts on bottom. I improve to a jack high flush on top. I use that term loosely because it's very likely one of my opponents has a better flush, and on bottom I pick up an open-ended straight draw. Surprisingly, action checks around. Still 5 ways to the river, which comes a jack on top and a deuce on bottom. I river the nuts on top and a 6 high straight on bottom. This time the big blind leads for 100. Middle position folds. I go all in for $350 effective. Action folds back to the big blind and they make the call. My opponent shows a lower full house on top and a rivered set of deuces on bottom, which I beat. Let's fucking go, baby! I am good on both boards, and I scoop this $950 pot. What a finish to this brutal session. I was in for 800, down 400, but after that final hand, I'm out for 915, booking a profit of $115 for the night. What a rough session this was. Again, I'm not sure why things always seem to go this way for me at the game. Do you guys have a venue where you always seem to run bad? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck at the tables, and I'll catch you in the next one.